human capital and financial capital enable innovation. After Google and SoftBank, the Korean automobile giant Hyundai acquired Boston Dynamics at the end of 2020. Furthermore, the company announced a $400 million investment to launch Boston Dynamics AI Institute in August 2022. So Marc, congratulations on your next big endeavor.
Thanks. I'm having a great time. We're hiring like mad. If any of you are engineers or robotics researchers out there, look us up and send us your resume.
Yeah, I'm sure people would love to work for this new AI Institute. I also love the website and logo design that incorporates your Hawaiian shirt signature pattern, which contrasts with most technology companies' color palette, for branding and logos. For example, deep blue, ocean blue was all very popular, for technology company. I'm curious about the considerations and decision process behind the scene. Could you tell us more about it? How did you decide the Hawaiian shirt being part of your, branding and logo?
The story is like how real things work. We wanted to do the announcement of the Institute about a month afterward, but there were some practical reasons why we needed to do a press release in about 3 days. So we called up our PR people and said, oh, we need a website by Friday. We need a logo. And the people, who had interacted with me made up the logo. You saw it was the first design. We didn't iterate it. And we threw it out there, and so far we're pretty happy with it. I'm not sure the branding will stay exactly like that forever, but we were lucky to get out of the gate with something that we seem to be happy with.
Yeah, I love it, and hope you would keep it. So, what are the reasons behind the AI Institute? Let's say why AI and why now?
Well, I think that people take for granted how smart people are, and they think by watching robots that are physical. We show robots dancing, we show robots doing parkour, running over the blocks, balancing on the beam, and they assume that the robots are also smart. It looks like the expression, it looks like a duck, it smells like a duck, it is a duck. But in robotics, it's not that way. It looks like a person, it moves like a person, but does it have the brains of a person? No. Does it have the perception of a person? No. Does it have the morality of a person? No. And does it have the language of a person? No. And so to make them as useful as people, we need to supply those other things. So the theme of the new institute is to do the physical part of robots like we've done for years, but to add a cognitive part and to try and get not only intelligence, but the symbolic intelligence. So we're working on solving those parts of the AI problem that are tightly connected to the physicality, but are different than the physicality, and thereby making robots a lot more effective and useful and valuable.
Mm-hmm. As written on your AI Institute website, the Boston Dynamics AI Institute is focusing on solving the most important problems in robotics and artificial intelligence to achieve fundamental advances in the engineering and science of robotics. What are the most important problems in robotics, in your opinion?
I think the one thing that is the most elusive so far is building the bridge between the continuous description of things, like a path is a trajectory that you can describe as an equation, or you can describe a picture by a pattern of numbers. How do you get from that to the symbolic description, where it's not a pattern, the picture isn't a bunch of numbers, but it's, oh, that's a cup, or oh, that's a person. That cup is similar to that cup. And that symbolic world is a very powerful world, but getting back and forth between the two is still pretty elusive when you look at all the generality. I can tell you, I'm not even in the room with you. I don't even know what's in the room, but I could tell you, give you instructions that you could follow. Get up from, we won't do it, but I'll tell you, get up from your chair, go find another chair, orient it so it's facing what your chair and go sit in it. And you could do that. And think of all the physical stuff that's going on. But I didn't give you any equations that describe that. I gave you the conceptual description, the director's description, and you can interpret that, translate it back into behavior. I think that's the level we need, and that's the most important thing we're focused on, not only for behavior but also for reasoning about the things around you.
Would you categorize this still as a functionality of robots or emotion of the robots? What part of the intelligence?
Yeah, I would call it a functionality to be able to reason. People have been working on it for a long time. There is some progress, but I think a lot more is needed.
Will the future robotics align with your earlier vision of legged robots?
It's true that I've spent a long time working on legged robots, very narrowly. I want to branch out from that. I don't think, legs are a good thing, but there's all kinds of robots. You may have noticed that at Boston Dynamics, that the stretch robot doesn't have legs, it has wheels, and it has a more traditional but still interesting mobility system. And we'll do things here that, span the space of mobility more broadly than what I've done in the past.
What are the biggest opportunities and highest risk towards the future?
Well, let me branch a little bit. I think I could give a technical answer, but I think another thing that we're going to try and do at the Institute is deal with some of the emotional things around robotics. There's a lot of people out there who say that they fear robots. If you look at our YouTube, the comments on our YouTube things, and some of them even broadly fear all technology. And my view is that technology offers great opportunities that humankind would be stupid to cast aside, even though there's also some risks. But I don't believe the risks are as negative as some people think. And there's certainly some people who are, on the fringe who are totally worried about what technology can do. So one of the things the Institute's going to do is start to have some conversations where I hope to get people from all sides talking to each other, exchanging ideas. One of the things we find is if you get in a room with some of our robots and operate them, you get, there's a deeper understanding, less fear. A lot of people love to pose for selfies with the robots, which I think is a kind of affection. And so I want to get that conversation started. I'm not an expert in any of the ethics or policy, but I think I would hate to see us thwarted by government policies that are too negative, or the public policies that are too negative about the field, but also not too positive.
This seems to be a perfect timing, having those conversations, because technology is probably a lot more ready, right, than the past 30 years. And then now, given AI's power, that seems to be a great combination. I'm going to quote another statement from your website, that we needed to make robots smarter, more agile, and dexterous, and generally easier to use, more like people. Once we do that, robots and other type of intelligent system will increase productivity, free people from dangerous work, care for disabled, and generally help people live a better life. Does your vision of the future world of human-robot coexistence include in-home use?
Yeah, I think that they will eventually make their way into homes. I think that as a commercial activity today, it's one of the toughest places, because you need utility and you need low cost. And getting both of those things in robots is still hard to do. I think it was last year or the year before, there were several robot company failures, situations where people were trying to just have a communication device that was a robot. And I think the problem was that it was still expensive, and it wasn't providing much utility beyond a laptop or a phone or something, which provides a lot of utility for the cost. So it's much easier to start in industrial uses where there's more money available because there's money making going on. There's more discipline because you can have rules in a factory about how people are going to interact with the robots. Whereas in a home, basically your children are there, your animals, your dogs and cats are there. In addition, maybe your elderly disabled parent is there who can't get around. So it's the most challenging environment. We'll get there, but it'll take a while.
If you have any educated guess, how long you think that's a while?
We talked about helping the disabled. I had an aunt who lived with me her last time, 6 months, and she had a stroke. I think she had 2 strokes actually. And we had 2 full-time staff, people who worked around the clock, helping her get in and out of bed, get in and out of the bathroom, get dressed. And I think that's the kind of situation where you could get a shoe in the door, where there's more money being spent so you can have a more expensive robot doing an important task. And, my aunt didn't really want to have strangers helping her. She would probably, I'm guessing that she might have preferred having a machine helping her do those things. So I think that's the kind of application that'll be the first one. So it's not the every house, as common as a pet, but it's a place where the economy could make it happen.
We are facing a similar situation one way or the other. It's a matter of timing. What do you just explain? Even like when we get old, right? Like how do we want it to be taken? Do I want to burden my daughter, to be full-time taking care of me?
In the United States, there's about 31 million people who spend about 20 hours or more a week taking care of someone like an elderly parent or some other kind of relative. And, that's a big burden on the whole system. And of course, I know, you're helping your loved ones and that's a nice thing to do, but I'm not convinced that, that the loved ones want to be taken care of that way rather than other ways. So I think there's a real opportunity there. And I hope we can help address it.
It seems to be a real demand, right? And it's probably increasing because with aging, and people getting more longevity. Definitely, I can definitely see that's a great opportunity. But what would be the relationship between human and robots if that happens?
Well, you definitely need easier communication than we have now, right? You want that person who's being helped to be able to be in charge of the robot and tell it what it wants it to do, and possibly to do that without a lot of technical skills on the user's point of view. So I think natural language will be important, but also having the robot smart enough to interpret in a safe way what it's being told to do. Because you can easily tell, if you just talk to a thing, you can easily tell it to do something that's not safe, or if the robot's not smart enough. So, coming up with the right balance, it's going to be a very interesting set of tasks.
Mm-hmm. I've been looking to a lot about Boston Dynamics because of this upcoming interview. I mean, you really set a great high standard, for the industry. For example, you have an ethical principles are published on the Boston Dynamics website, right? Just to name a few, we are motivated by curiosity and respect for humans and animals. And then we prioritize human elements in human-robot relationships. And there's another one, we support the establishment of laws and regulations that promote safe and responsible use of robots. Will the new AI Institute share similar principles?
Yeah, I think so. Now, I want to say that, I wasn't a key force in designing that. We have a lot of people at Boston Dynamics, and I think we, worked over the course of a couple of years to come up with those statements. In addition to, the more, we have in our license agreement the requirement that no one weaponize the robots. And, there's a lot of nuance there. if you look carefully at our agreements, they say that, we are not against the police and the military, who sometimes need to use weapons, but we think that the robots we are building are not the right ones to use for that. You need specialized solutions. And one of the sources behind these statements is we think that there's some folks out there who are using kind of an everyday robot in those very complicated situations. And we're sort of objecting to that, but not necessarily that people like police and military shouldn't use the tools that are available to them. So I have two thoughts. One is, I think that for every technology, there's a whole spectrum of things that can be used for, that range from something you'd call good and something you'd call bad, or different people. Some would call one thing good and other people would call a different thing good, which is another problem. And the goodness and the badness is not in the technology. They're independent of each other, in my opinion. And I don't think the technology should be blamed for the things you don't like, and probably not even given credit for the things you do like. Let's take cars. On the one hand, cars have been a huge boon to the economy of the world, to the freedom of people. I could say, more good things. And they also pollute and have been a source of pollution. Mm-hmm. Is it car technology that's at fault? So one thought has to do with sort of the independence. Here's technology and here's good and bad, and I don't think we should combine them. The other thought is that as a technologist, I'm always afraid that policy will come too early and cut off the opportunities by making decisions very early in the game. An example is that if you look at some of the rules for safety of robots, they say things like you have to have an on-off switch that entirely cuts the power to the robot. Now, if you have a robot that's like on wheels and moves slowly, it's okay to cut the power. The robot will just stand there. If you have a robot that's like a person that's balancing itself and you cut the power, the robot will crash into whatever's nearby. So you need more nuanced rules for some kinds of technology. And so I'm always afraid when policy is happening too early in the game. I'm sure there's people who are on the other side who doesn't want technology to get out ahead of the policy making. But as a technologist, I'm on that side of that topic.
So what would be the sort of a good balance to strike in your mind?
I think you need to have constructive people openly talking about all sides of the topic. Mm-hmm. I think that's what's needed for these things, and not to jump to a knee-jerk position. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. What about in the future? Because we imagine a world that a human and robot coexist, right? So the environment you just talk about, for example, in home, would that require like some new, like social science or some other part of the science being plugged into, the robot design by itself?
This is a topic that is important, but I probably know less about. I know we have one of the researchers here who's been telling me that we need to improve our HRI, human robot interaction aspect to our plan. And, they're working on coming up with some suggestions on how to do that. To be honest, I think I started at the greasy end of the robot, where we're trying to get the mechanism to move the way we need it to move. And we're working towards the cognitive. And then the question of how far to go to the emotional and interaction side is, a TBD.
That's great. Marc, what is the final thought or one thing that you'd like our audience to remember from this conversation?
I think that the idea that people should work on things that they love doing, and that for me, robotics is so much fun and satisfying, that it's a great career, and I'm just happy to be doing what we're doing, and look forward to the next phase of it.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Mark, when I first met you at Google, I couldn't possibly have imagined interviewing the founder of Boston Dynamics on my own program like 8 years later. Thank you so much for sharing your stories and ideas with us today. On behalf of Oceanside Perspective and our global audience, I wish you and your team at Boston Dynamics and the newly established AI Institute the best of luck with your new chapters ahead, and a very happy new year. I hope you enjoy this chat as well.
Helen, it's been great. I can remember when we first met at that dinner, and it's been great talking to you ever since. And I really admire the organization you have going there, and it's been a pleasure talking to you. Help support.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay.
Thanks, Mark.